What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What up, y'all? All right, Diva had to help me get this thing together, but let me go ahead and play this here. Oh, 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 no.
I don't need negative energy, wrap me in positive synergy. I have been doubted through life, been there and done it with trifling people who told me my style would not work. I told them they wrong, been struggling too long. This song is for you, I'm proving you wrong. Get out my way, get out my way, get out my way, get out my way.
I'm a genuine person. Like if I love you, I love you. If I don't mess with you, I don't mess with you. It's as simple as that.
All right, I think we good. If y'all would please let me know if you can hear me or not. Please let me know if you can hear me or not. Can y'all hear me? What's going on? Larry's Million, I see you. 100, I see you. Wifey, what's good? I see you. I see you. All right, I'm going to give people some time to get up in here. I'm going to get some people some time to get up in here. Can y'all hear me pretty good? All right. All right, giving King a bath. Tell old King I said what's going on. All right, let me make sure so y'all can see what's going on. All right, I'm gonna give people a few minutes to get up in here. Y'all hear me? Perfect. Okay. Hey, Danny, how you doing? All right, I'm gonna give a couple people a few minutes to get up in here. We're gonna go from page 51 to about 65, and then Diva gonna pick it up from there. So we are. I called her up this morning. I said, sis, I said, you ain't got to read all that by yourself. I said, I'll take on some of that burden. I said, when I read them 26 pages the other night and then the 12, them things will weigh you out. Like I was saying, I don't see how Larry a beast, the way he was running through these pages. But it's a lot of information in here that we need to go over to make sure that when we are talking about this case, that we know exactly what we're talking about. Because it's important. Let me some air on. Okay, there we go. All right, y'all. So check this out. So we are going to go ahead and get started reading this paperwork. We're going to pick up where Diva left off. Let me pull this up so it's a lot clearer to y'all. Let me see here. Let me go right here. There we go. All right. So hopefully y'all can see it. Let me pull it up on my phone so I can make sure that y'all are seeing what I'm seeing. One moment here. Un momento. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so y'all can see me and y'all can see the paperwork. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, y'all. Request number 21. Racketeering Act, forced labor. Let's see. So I'm going to have y'all up right here. That way. I'm going to get, you know what? Let me give a couple of people a little bit of time, y'all. So I got 7 in here right now. People probably trying to find the channel. And then we'll go ahead and get started. How's everybody's weekend going? How was everybody's weekend? Hopefully it's fine. Let's see. So once we get about 10 in here, we'll go ahead and get going. Yeah, if y'all could please hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. Please hit the like button. I'm just making sure. Let me open this up a little bit so it's bigger for y'all to see. And then I'll be able to stroll up and down. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, cool. Diva hooked me up. I'm over here like, man. All right, we got our 10. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and get started, y'all. So this is request number 21, Racketeering Act 6, forced labor. Racketeering Act 6 alleges that the defendant committed forced labor of Jane Doe number 4.
This is a life-threatening situation. What? Please dial emergency services
Alexa,
directly from your phone.
Stop. Nobody talking to you. Okay. So it says in or about and between May of 2019 and January 2010. Both dates being approximate and inclusive with the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere. The defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally obtain the labor and services of a person to wit Jane Doe number 4 by means of force, threats of force, physical restraint, and the threats of physical restraint to that person and another person by means of serious harm and threats of serious harm to that person or another person by the means of a scheme, plan, and pattern intended to cause such person to believe that if that person did not perform such labor and services, such person would suffer serious harm and physical restraint in a combination of means in violation of Title 18, United States Code sections 115, 89A and 2. The relevant statute reads as follows: whoever knowingly obtains the labor of or services of another person by means of force, threats of force, physical restraint, or threats of physical restraint to that person or another person by means of serious harm or threats of serious harm to that person or another person, or by means of any scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause the person to believe that if the person did not perform such labor or services, that person or another person would suffer serious harm or physical restraint, shall be guilty of the crime. So they are making it very, very, very clear that these jurors truly understand not only what these charges are, but also how they need to think about what they are reading. This is extremely detailed. It says here to prove that the defendant committed this racketeering act, the government must prove 3 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? The first element is that the defendant obtained the or physical restraint against Jane Doe number 4 or any other person, or B, through a scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause Jane Doe number 4 to believe that non-performance would result in serious harm to or physical restraint against Jane Doe number 4 for any or any other person. And number 3, the defendant acted knowingly. The first element the government must prove is that the defendant obtained the labor or services of another person, in this case, Jane Doe number 4. To obtain means to acquire, control, or possess, even if only for a short period of time. Labor means the expenditure of physical or mental effort. Services mean conduct or performance that assist or benefit someone. The government does not have to prove that Jane Doe number 4 performed work for the defendant in the economic sense, although that would satisfy this element. Labor or services can include, but not limited to, sexual services. All the government must prove is that Jane Doe number 4 provided labor or services as I just defined them. As to the second element, if you find that the defendant obtained the labor or services of Jane Doe number 4, then you must determine whether the defendant did so through one of the 2 prohibited means. That is, either through threats of serious harm to or physical restraint against a person, or through a scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause the person to believe that serious harm would result if she did not perform the labor or services required of her. In order to find that the second element has been satisfied, you must find beyond a reasonable doubt that at least one of the prohibited means I just mentioned was used to obtain Jane Doe number 4's labor or services. I now want to define for you some of the terms that you will be considering in determining whether this second element of Racketeering Act 6 has been satisfied. The term serious harm includes both physical and non-physical types of harm, including psychological, financial, or reputational harm. Wow, wow, and wow. Can anybody in this chat tell me if there have been any people on the R. Kelly side, aka bloggers, that have inflicted reputational harm on any of these alleged victims? Please hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. Please hit the like button. All right. It says a threat of serious harm, therefore, need not involve any threat of physical violence. It includes improper threats of consequences, whether physical or non-physical, that are sufficient under all the surrounding circumstances to compel or coerce a reasonable person of the same background and in the same circumstances as Jane Doe to provide or continue providing labor services in order to avoid that harm. And considering whether a threat of harm would be sufficient to compel or coerce an alleged victim's services, you may also consider that the defendant's conduct, as well as Jane Doe number 4's special vulnerabilities, if any. In this regard, you may find that not all persons are of the same courage or firmness. You may also consider, for example, Jane Doe number 4's age, background, and physical and mental condition, experience, education, socioeconomic status, and any inequalities between Jane Doe number 4 and the defendant with respect to these considerations, including their relative stations in life. Among other things, simply put, you may ask whether Jane Doe number 4 was vulnerable in some type of way so that the actions of the defendant, even if not sufficient to compel another person to provide labor or services, were enough to compel Jane Doe number 4 to provide labor or services. This is talking about brainwashing. This is talking about using your money as power to make them do what you want them to do. Wow. The word scheme, plan, and pattern are to be given their ordinary meaning. The scheme, plan, or pattern need not involve actual threats or serious harm, but may involve any other means, including deception or psychological coercion, used to cause the victim to reasonably believe that she, her family, or any other person would suffer serious harm if she refused to continue providing labor or services. If you find that any of the two prohibited means I mentioned earlier was used, you must then determine whether such use was sufficient to cause Jane Doe to provide labor or services to the defendant. Now, in making that determination, you may also consider conduct. Now, a few final things about the second element of the offense of forced labor. To prove forced labor, the government does not need to link each of the threats allegedly made or actions allegedly made or taken of Jane Doe number 4 to particular labor or services asked. If Jane Doe number 4 was threatened with or suffered certain consequences in connection with the services she rendered, either as punishment or as part of the climate or fear that overcame her will and compelled her service, that is sufficient to establish the second element of the offense forced labor. It's buffering a little. Whoa. Let's go back. It says the government also need not prove or circumstances that she did not reasonably believe that she could leave. I control you. But if you want to leave, the door's wide open. I'm going to let you go. Okay, I see where it's buffering. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm watching it go in and out. Hopefully, y'all can hear me, though. The door's wide open. You can go ahead and leave if you want to. Go ahead and leave. Go ahead and leave. All right? It's that fear or circumstances that she did not reasonably believe that she could leave. So although they keep saying, oh, the girls were free to go whenever they wanted to, they can go in and out whenever they wanted to. Could they really? Could they really just leave? It says here, finally, in considering whether service performed by someone was involuntary, you are instructed that it is not a defense to the crime of forced labor that the person may have voluntarily to render the service or perform pattern intended to cause her to believe that non-performance will result in serious harm to her or another person, then her service becomes involuntary. So if they told her, go ahead and do this, and she said, okay, and then she said, you know what? No, I don't want to do it no more. And they say, no, you're going to do this. You already started. Go ahead and finish. And she says, no, I told you I don't want to do it no more. And they force her. That right there is against the law. That is against the law. And it also says here that, let's see here, her to perform, that non-performance will result in serious harm or another person, then her service becomes involuntary. Also, whether a person is paid a salary or a wage is not determinative of the question of whether that person has been held in forced labor. In other words, if a person is compelled to labor against her will by any one of the means prohibited by the forced labor statute, such service is involuntary, even if she is paid or compensated for the labor or services. With regard to the third element, the government must prove that the defendant acted knowingly, a concept that I have already explained to you. Now they list some case law. Okay, y'all. So what it's basically saying is no matter if you pay somebody to do this or not, well, we paid her to do that. If she said, even after you paid her, you know what, I don't want to do this, and you said, nope, you got to do this because we done paid you, that is against the law. That can be considered involuntary if after she volunteers to do it, she starts to act, she says, you know what, no, I want to stop. If she says, I want to stop, it is supposed to be done. You cannot force her to complete a service for you just because you paid her. That is against her will. Here we go. Let's keep going. It says here, authority. Request number 22, Racketeering Act 7, sexual exploitation. Oh boy, here we go. Racketeering Act 7 alleges that the defendant sexually exploited Jane Doe number 4. The indictment reads as follows. In or about and between May 2009 and January 2010, both dates being approximate and inclusive, within the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally employ, use, persuade, induce, entice, and coerce a minor, to wit, Jane Doe number 4, to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing one or more visual depictions of such conduct, which visual depictions were produced using materials that have been mailed, shipped, and transported in and affected interstate and foreign commerce in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 2251A, 2251A, 2251E, and 2. I have already instructed you on the law that applies to sexual exploitation, and you should apply that here. Request number 23, Racketeering Act 8, Mann Act violations. Now we're going into Jane Doe number 5, y'all. Here we go. Racketeering Act 8 alleges that the defendant committed 2 separate violations of the Mann Act. One was related to transportation and the other involving coercion or enticement. Thus, Racketeering Act 8 has 2 parts, and you will render separate verdicts on each part. If you find that the defendant committed either or both of these crimes, you must find that the government has proved or proven Racketeering Act 8. So, Racketeering Act 8, transportation. The first part, which is referring to on the verdict sheet as Racketeering Act 8, A, alleges that the defendant transported Jane Doe number 5 for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity with respect to Racketeering Act 8, A. The indictment reads as follows. Here we go. On or about April 28, 2015 and May 1st of 2015, both dates being approximate and inclusive, within the Central District of California and the Northern District of California and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally transport an individual, Jane Doe number 5, an individual whose identity is known to the grand jury, in interstate commerce with intent that such individual engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense, to wit, violations Cal Health and Safety Code. In that, Kelly engaged in unprotected sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5 without first obtaining her consent to sexual intercourse in these circumstances in violation of Title 18. Whoa. Hold on. It says, in that Kelly engaged in unprotected sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5 without first informing Jane Doe number 5 that he had contracted herpes and obtaining her consent to sexual intercourse in these circumstances in violation of Title 18 United States Code Sections 2421A and 2. The indictment charges that the defendant, with violating Section 2421 of Title 18 in the United States Code, which section provides, in relevant part, whoever knowingly transports an individual in interstate commerce with the intent of such individual engaged in any sexual activity for which any person can be charged with a criminal the defendant guilty. In order to prove the defendant guilty of transporting the individual for purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity, the government must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Here we go. First, that the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 in interstate commerce as alleged in the indictment. And number 2, that the defendant transported or caused the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 with the intent that he would engage in illegal sexual activity with Jane Doe number 5. The first element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation. So they're saying either transported or caused the transportation. That the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 in interstate commerce as alleged with the indictment. Interstate commerce means simply movement between one state or another. The government does not have to prove that the defendant personally transported Jane Doe number 5 across a state line. It is sufficient to satisfy this element that the defendant was actively engaged in or caused the making of the travel arrangements, such as by purchasing or causing the purchase of the tickets, can y'all see the paper? I don't. Hold on. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me go back over here. Somebody said move the message. Okay, let me move this. Hold on. Sorry. Let me find Danny's message. There we go. Okay, I moved it. All right, hold on. Let me get back over here. All right, there we go. Okay, hopefully that's better. Okay, it says here that the first element that the government must prove beyond reasonable doubt is that the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 in interstate commerce as alleged in the indictment. Interstate commerce means simply movement between one state or another. Prove that across the state line. It is sufficient to satisfy this element that the defendant was actively engaged in or caused the making of travel arrangements, such as by purchasing or causing the purchase of the tickets necessary for the individual's travel as planned. The defendant must have knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 in interstate commerce. This means that the government must prove that, let's see, it says Holland 381, FD 8687. It says, we cannot agree that the proposition that an operator of a prostitution ring may escape liability by accepting a bus company's offer to leave the driving to us, invited case. They're just trying to verify this. So it says here that the defendant knew both that he was transporting Jane Doe number 5, as I defined that term, and that he was transporting Jane Doe number 5 in interstate commerce. To act knowingly means to voluntarily or intentionally, and not because of accident, mistake, or other incident reason. The second element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the defendant transported or cause the transportation of Jane Doe number 5 with the intent that he would engage in illegal sexual activity with Jane Doe number 5. Direct proof of a person's intent is almost never available. It will be rare. It will be a rare case that it could be shown that a person wrote or stated that as if a given time he committed an act with a particular intent. Such direct proof is not required. The ultimate fact of intent, though subjective, may be established by circumstantial evidence based upon the defendant's outward inferences that may be drawn from them. In order to establish this element, it is not necessary that the government to prove that engaging in illegal sex purpose for crossing the state line. A person may have several different purposes across the state line was that Jane Doe number 5 would engage in illegal sexual activity. Now, in other words, that illegal activity must not have been merely incidental to the trip. Under California law, specifically California Health Safe Code, any person inflicted with a contagious, infectious, or communicable disease who willingly exposes himself or herself to another person shall be punished. The government must prove without a reasonable doubt, number 1, that the defendant knew that he was afflicted with any contagious, infectious, or communicable disease. Number 2, that the defendant exposed himself to Jane Doe number 5 by engaging in unprotected sexual activity with Jane Doe number 5. Number 3, that the defendant acted willfully. And number 4, that the defendant did not inform Jane Doe number 5 that he had a contagious, infectious, and communicable disease and obtained her consent to expose himself in these circumstances prior to engaging in the exposure. With respect to the first element, communicable disease means any disease that was transferable through the exposure incident. With respect to the third element, the term willingly means with knowledge of the circumstances and purposefully. It does not require that the defendant intended to expose another to a contagious, infectious, and communicable disease. B, Racketeering Act 8B, coercion or enticement. The second part, which is referred to on the verdict sheet as Racketeering Act 8B, alleges that the defendant enticed or coerced Jane Doe number 5 for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity. With respect to Racketeering Act 8B, the indictment reads as follows. It says here that a communicable disease means any disease that was transferable through the exposure incident as determined by the certifying physician. California penal law says the word willfully, when applied to the intent, with which an act is done or omitted, implies simply a purpose or willingness to commit the act or make an omission referred to. It does not require any intent to violate law or to injure another or to acquire any advantage. It says willfully implies no evil intent. Here we go. On or about April 28, 2015 and May 1st of 2015, both dates being approximate and inclusive within the Central District of California, the Northern District of California, and elsewhere. The defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally persuade, induce, entice, and coerce an individual, to wit, Jane Doe number 5, to travel in interstate commerce to engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense, to wit, California Health and Safety Code. Effective 1998, willful exposure to a communicable disease, and that Kelly engaged in unprotected sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5 without first informing Jane Doe number 5 that he had contracted herpes and obtaining her consent to sexual intercourse in these circumstances in violation of Title 18. Says here, whoever knowingly persuades, induces, entices, or coerces any individual to travel in interstate commerce to engage in any sexual activity with any person that can be charged with a criminal offense shall be guilty of a crime. In order to prove that a defendant guilty of persuading and inducing or enticing or coercing an individual to travel for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity, the government must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Number 1, the defendant knowingly persuaded, induced, enticed, or coerced Jane Doe number 5 to travel in interstate commerce as alleged in the indictment. So pretty much just saying, hey, you come down here, we're going to take care of you. You're going to be good. I'm going to put all kind of bread in your pocket. All this. Number 2, the Jane Doe number 5 traveled in interstate commerce. And number 3, that the defendant acted with the intent that Jane Doe number 5 would engage in illegal sexual activity. I have already instructed you regarding the elements of a violation in California Health and Safety Code. Request number 4, Racketeering Act 9, Mann Act violations for Jane Doe number 5. Racketeering Act 9 alleges that the has 4 parts, and you will part. Oh my goodness, they're breaking this thing all the way down. If you find that the defendant committed any one of all 4 of these crimes, you must find that the government has proven Racketeering Act number 9. Here we go. So Racketeering Act number 9, transportation. The first part, purposes of engaging in illegal sexual activity with respect to Racketeering Act 9A. The indictment reads as follows. Let me grab something to drink, y'all. Hold on. For 2015, both dates being approximate and inclusive within the Eastern District of New York and Northern District of California and elsewhere. The defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally transport an individual, to wit, Jane Doe number 5, in interstate commerce, with the intent that such individual engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense, to wit, violations of California Penal Law Sections 261.5, with unlawful sexual intercourse with a person under 18 years old, and that Kelly engaged in sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5, who was under 18 years old, while he was more than 3 years older. than Jane Doe number 5 in violation to Title 18. Here we go. Provides that the defendant violated California law by engaging in sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5, who was under 18 years old. Wow, he was more than 3 years older than Jane Doe number 5. California law provides that any person who engages in an act of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor who is not more than 3 years older or 3 years younger than the perpetrator is guilty of a crime. Let me read that one more time for the slow people in the back. Let me go back up a little bit. Says here, California law provides that any person who engages in an act of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor who is not more than 3 years older or 3 years younger than the perpetrator is guilty of a crime. Unlawful sexual intercourse is an act of sexual intercourse accomplished with a person who is not the spouse of the perpetrator. If the person is a minor, for the purposes of this section, a minor is a person under the age of 18, and an adult is a person who is at least 18 years of age. Racketeering Act 9B, coercion and enticement. The second part, which is reads as follows. In or about September 2015 and October 2015, within the Eastern District of New York, the Northern District of California, and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, their enterprise, and intentionally persuade, induce, entice, and coerce an individual, Jane Doe number 5, to travel in interstate commerce to engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense, to wit, violations of California Penal Law Section 261.5A and 261.5B, unlawful sexual intercourse with the person under the age of 18, and that Kelly engaged in sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5, who was under 18 years old, while he was more than 3 years older than Jane Doe number 5 in violation of Title 18. I have already instructed you on the elements of coercion and enticement in violation of the Mann Act. You should apply those here. Racketeering Act 9, coercion of a minor. The third part, which is referred to on the verdict sheet as Racketeering Act 9C, alleges that the defendant, using an interstate facility, coerced or enticed Jane Doe number 5 to engage in illegal sexual activity. With respect to Racketeering Act 9, the indictment reads as follows. In or about or between September 2015 and October 2015, within the Eastern District of New York, the Northern District of California, and elsewhere, who had not attained the age of 18 years old, to wit, Jane Doe number 5, to engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense, Violations of California penal law. Okay, unlawful intercourse with the person 18 years or older. In that, Kelly engaged in sexual intercourse with Jane Doe number 5, who was under 18 years old, while he was more than 3 years older. All right, let me see here. The indictment charges that the defendant with violating section 2422B of Title 9 of the U.S. Code. The section provides the relevant part. Whoever activity for which any person can be charged with a criminal offense shall be guilty of the crime. In order to prove that the defendant guilty of using a facility of interstate commerce to persuade or induce or entice or coerce an individual to engage in illegal sexual activity, the government must prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Number 1, the defendant used a facility of interstate commerce. Now, I know Diva earlier was saying, trying to figure out what the interstate commerce thing was. I would say, and I could be wrong. I guess they'll clear this up on Wednesday. I would say anything that would be a facility could be a way of transportation or a way of movement from one state to the other. They could call that a facility. A facility could be a plane, could be a bus, could be anything that would get a person back and forth from state to state. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that's everywhere it is. Okay. Number 2, that the defendant knowingly persuaded or induced or enticed or coerced Jane Doe number 5 to engage in sexual activity. Number 3, that this sexual activity would violate California law. And number 4, that Jane Doe number 5 was less than 18 years old at the time of the acts in the indictment. The first element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the defendant used a facility of interstate commerce, transmission, or communications by means of telephone constitutes the use of a facility of interstate commerce, regardless of whether the communication actually crossed the state line. Oh. Transmission of communications by means of a telephone constitutes the use of a facility of interstate commerce, regardless of whether the communication actually crossed the state line. So what they're saying is you can be in one state and she could be in another state, but if y'all talking over the phone, which crosses state lines, about you telling her to come here, that can be considered using the facility. I get it. Think I get it, y'all. Wow. However, you must find beyond a reasonable doubt that the specific communication in question was actually transmitted by means of the telephone. Okay, so the telephone could be the means of the facility. Yeah, Granny, I think that's what it is. The telephone is a facility. Let me see what else could be a facility. How do people communicate? Telephone. That's pretty much it, right? We got Skype, we got telephone. I think that's what it is, y'all. I think we didn't figure that out. All right. However, you must find a reasonable doubt that the specific communication in question was actually transmitted by means of a telephone. The second element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that the defendant knowingly persuaded or induced or enticed or coerced Jane Doe number 5 to engage in sexual activity. The words persuade or induce or entice or coerced should be given their ordinary meaning. The third element of that the government must prove beyond reasonable doubt is that this sexual activity would violate California law. As I instructed you about the relevant California law as to Racketeering Act 9A, and you should apply that there. The fourth element that the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt is that Jane Doe number 4 was less than 18 years old at the time of the acts alleged in the indictment. The government does not need to prove that the defendant knew that Jane Doe number 4 was less than 18 years old. Now, wow. So Jane Doe number 4 and Jane Doe number 5, they're trying to say was under 18. Whew. The fourth part, which is referred to in the verdict sheet as Racketeering Act 9D, alleges that the defendant transported a minor, Jane Doe number 5, for the purpose of engaging in illegal sexual activity. All right, let me see. Okay, we read that part already. Let me see. A person who knowingly transports an individual who has not attained the age of 18 in interstate of foreign commerce with intent that the individual engage in any sexual activity for which any person can be charged. All right. The elements crime. Okay. First, that the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of a minor in interstate of foreign commerce. Number 2, that the defendant transported or caused the transportation of the minor with the intent that she would engage in any sexual activity for which a person can be charged for a criminal offense. And third, that the defendant was less than 18 years old at the time of the sexual acts in the indictment. All right, y'all. So that's where I told Diva I would stop, and she is going to pick up either later today or she is going to pick up when she comes on with if y'all want me to read on, I'll check with her, see if she wants to pick up from there. Other than that, y'all, that's what we got going on. That's what we got going on. So this is pretty much breaking things down a whole lot more. It's really getting into the minds and breaking down exactly how these jurors need to be thinking. It doesn't allow them to lean to their own understanding. It's telling them this is how you need to think. This is what this word means. This is what coercion means. This is what this means. This is what that means. This is what the foreign device is. You know, so if they called from California and she was in New York, that call went across state lines. It don't mean that she got to be Tone Lagoon. What's up, bro? So this is pretty deep, y'all. So thank y'all for letting me read this to y'all. Like I said, y'all know how we do over here. We go straight with the facts. You know what I mean? That's what it is. I want to thank everybody for coming over here. I'm gonna go in here and spend some time with the baby because I just got home. But if I don't see y'all tonight, I will see y'all tomorrow morning on This Blessed House. As y'all know, if you would like to be a blessing to the channel, you know what to do. Hit the Cash App, $ This Blessed House. You know, I appreciate everything, even if it's just enough just to help cover the cost of these indictments. Because there I see what Larry was talking about. These things do cost. However, y'all don't make us do this. We do this because we love y'all. And we want to make sure that when these things come out, that y'all not getting no spin. Because a lot of times I notice when they reading this stuff, they leave a lot of stuff out. They don't read every single thing. And they put their own twist on it. So if y'all were just to listen to the other side, y'all be like, damn, maybe this is crazy. Maybe R. Kelly do got Nah, that's why we read it all the way we do. Okay? So I want y'all to know I love y'all. Thank y'all for coming over here. And I will holler at y'all later on. For all y'all that's going to be here tomorrow, I'll see y'all tomorrow. All right? God bless y'all. Peace.